The next helper that we're going to be talking about, which is the map helper, is absolutely the most widely used array helper around, and you will undoubtedly get a lot of good use from it. We're going to approach the map helper in the same way that we did for each. First, we're going to write some code to show you how map works if it was implemented as a for loop, and then we're going to refactor that code to use map instead. So for this first example, we're going to start with the very classic use case of map, which is to write a loop that iterates over a list of numbers, doubles the value of each number in the array, and then pushes that doubled number into a new array. So the key part here, the really key thing, we're going to put each doubled value into a new array. So let's actually write out the code because I know describing it with words is never that clear. So I'm going to take an array of numbers, just 1, 2, 3, and I'm going to make a new array, doubled numbers. And we're going to start it off with empty, or just to be an empty array. So for each element in numbers, I want to double it and then stuff it into double numbers. So let's do this with a for loop. I'll start off with my var I at 0, I less than numbers.length, and then I'll say double numbers.push numbers at I times 2, like so. And now I can print out doubled numbers, and I clearly get 2, 4, and 6 on the right-hand side over here. So we're definitely have the right effect here. You might be wondering why I decided kind of seemingly arbitrarily to put the double numbers into a new array. And this is a very good question. Why did I choose to make a new array for these double numbers? The answer is simple. In large, complex JavaScript applications, we want to avoid mutating or changing data wherever possible. So if I edited the numbers inside of the numbers array, I would be mutating or changing the data. And what I mean by that is if I did something like numbers at I is numbers at I times 2. So in this case, I am changing the numbers array in place here. I would refer to this as mutating the numbers array. I'm going to uncomment this. There we go. If I edited the values in there, I would start to lead towards a lot of complexity and bugs in larger applications. The reason for that is that if I have my numbers array like kind of in this little snippet of code right here, but I'm also using that numbers array in some other snippet of code across on the other side of the application, and all of a sudden I start just kind of changing the numbers around, randomly, or seemingly randomly, just kind of doubling them. In that other area of my application, I might not be expecting for my numbers array to just suddenly start changing without really kind of any reason or rhyme or reason for it happening. So wherever possible, we want to avoid mutating an array in place. Instead, we will return a new array return a new array. There we go. So let's see how this would work with a map helper. And the thing that I want you to keep in mind here is that in the for loop example, we did create a new array here, okay? So let's see what this would look like if we refactored it. I'm going to say var doubled is numbers.map, and then we'll pass in an anonymous function. And inside of here, I'll take number times 2. Then I will print out doubled as well. And so you can see I got 246 and 246. Both of them put out the same exact result. So this now looks awfully similar to the for each helper right here, doesn't it? I've got my array, I've got some helper, map in this case instead of for each, and then I pass in an anonymous function. So here's what's going on. Each number in the numbers array is being passed into the anonymous function that we're passing in. Whatever this function returns, so notice I do have a return keyword in here, is placed into a new array. After each element has been processed, that new array is returned. So let's, again, explain this stuff with words, not always super effective. Let's take a look at a diagram. So here's what's going on behind the scenes. On the left-hand side, we have our numbers array. Let's just kind of ignore everything on the bottom half and just focus on this first row up top. We take the first element in the array and we pass it to our iterator function. And right now that's the one that multiplies the number by 2 and returns the result. So we take 1, we pass it to the iterator function, it multiplies 1 by 2, and it now returns the number 2. On the second pass through, we take the number 2, we pass it to our iterator function. It multiplies 2 by 2 and returns 4, and so on, repeat with 3, and we get 6 back. So for each element in the numbers array, we run some iterator function, and then we stuff the result into a result array, or kind of a brand new array. So we are now working with 2 separate arrays here. We've got the original one, and we've got the new one that we just kind of mapped out, or we just created by using the map helper. So again, the key here is that we're using the map helper to create a brand new array, so we are not mutating the existing array. We're not making changes to numbers right here. We're not producing some new array, or excuse me, we're not changing the existing array, we are producing a new one instead. The one thing that I want to point out here in particular is that making sure that you have the return keyword is absolutely critical. If you don't return a value from the inner function, map will just think that you're returning undefined, and so it's not going to put any double numbers in there whatsoever. So if I take out the return keyword, you can see that I now get null, null, null. So I need to make sure that I always place the return keyword inside of a mapping function. This is going to be common to a lot of the array helper methods that we're going to work with. One of the most common examples that the most common mistake that you'll make is probably forgetting to put the return statement in here. All right, let's move on to a more complex example of map in the next section.